Songs of a True Right Brother. So we're telling a little bit of the story of the Creator, as I understand His being and existence. When He dies as a human being on the cross, albeit a fully developed human being, and His blood flows into the earth, He descends not just into hell, but through hell to the realm of the Divine Mother. And of course this is one of the things that is connected to what the Gospel of John says, that Christ says when Christ is reported as saying, "I have much more to say to you, but you can't bear it just yet." The relationship of the Divine Feminine to the creation and all of those kinds of things is a matter that has to be dealt with some delicacy, because it's not entirely what we might want to think that it is, just with superficial thinking. But nevertheless, there's something very important there that can be understood. It is in the realm of the Divine Mother that Christ arrives when He finishes that aspect of His death and then is able to resurrect. And this happens because of forces that He's supplied by the Mother. And of course there's a whole lot one can go into if one wants to appreciate certain aspects of this. It wouldn't hurt to read the wonderful novel by Marion Zimmer Bradley called The Mists of Avalon, which talks about the relationship between the goddess religions in England around the 4th or 5th century, the time of the Arthurian legends, and Christianity, which was then coming into England and meeting both the goddess religions and the Celtic peoples that had come there, and all the different things that were going on in England in its spiritual history at that time. Okay, so we've introduced this mystery of the Creator being who dies because of His wish to fully understand what it means to be human, to identify with us. And He then becomes the spirit of the earth. That is, He does not go back out into the cosmic regions in a kind of way. He concentrates the greater part of His being directly in relationship to the earth. Now, of course, there's a mystery here, because such a being, when it's not incarnate in a physical body, although to a certain extent you could say the earth is now the physical body of Christ, and that's one of the secret mysteries hidden in the Eucharist. And of course, in the environmental movement, we are trying to preserve this body. At the same time, there's an aspect of Christ which is connected to His original nature as the Creator, which stands outside space and time. And this is an important idea to have if we want to ask ourselves, well, how does He pay attention to us? How does He give to us the things that we want to think? You know, in the movies about God with Morgan Freeman, you have this idea of when the God power goes over to the human being, that he sits at a computer and he's able to answer all these prayers, and it all takes place in time. Well, the fact is the Creator is outside time and space, and He has eternity in which to devote His attention to us. So there's really nothing that we can ask of Him that He can't relate to. He's not going to give us everything, because we're children. We're children becoming spiritual adults, but that transition itself is a big step, and it doesn't happen all at once. And the events that we are involved in, which the Hopi call the Day of Purification, are very much related to this transition from spiritual childhood to spiritual adulthood. And there's kind of a mystery there. When we get into the structure of the world, after developing some other ideas, after this transition moment, we'll end up coming to the mystery of evil. So we have lots of mysteries here. We have the mystery of Golgotha, which involves the real meaning of the death and the resurrection of Christ. We have the mystery of evil, and we have what we talked about last time up to a certain point, which was individual moral freedom, and the fact that one of the phenomenon that can be observed today and is observed by our artists like Clint Eastwood and other people, we have this moral nature that wants to emerge us from ourself. We don't want to be confined or determined by a priest telling us what the right thing to do is. We want to do it ourselves. In my writing, I call this moral grace. Now, in the deepest parts of my writing on these mysteries, I talk about the second Eucharist, which is related to the second coming. Now, from a certain standpoint, using some different language, which will be developed further as we go along, the spiritual world is complicated. It's as complicated as the material world. So that which is spirit, which we're going to add to our ideas of matter during these dialogues, there is different language that we have to adopt, and one of that part of that language is the term ethereal, the ethereal world. Now, we have direct contact with that whenever we see life processes. The ethereal world is connected to life processes. We also have direct contact with that when we think, because thinking is an ethereal activity. In spite of our ideas that it's bound only to the material brain, the fact is that the material brain is an organ in the human being which enables the spiritual and the material to unite in the human being. And that's why it's as complex and as interesting as it is, and manifests all the phenomenon that a natural scientist discovers. But anyway, with the second coming, this second coming which is taking place in the ethereal, which I suggested to you, it's possible for you to meet when you develop your moral thinking. There is a second Eucharist, and you can read about this in my writing in several places, because certain aspects of it are important enough that I distributed the principal essays in multiple places. You can buy a little booklet called Living, Thinking, and Action, which has the two primary essays. You can buy New Wine, which is a collection of essays about science and the science of the spirit in relationship to Christianity. You can buy The Way of the Fool, which is about the transition of Christianity from a hierarchical structure to a structure which comes from the social commons. It comes out of the individual rather than out of priests and popes and bishops and people of authority. You'd also find it in my book American Anthroposophy, where I write to the heretical Christian stream that are familiar with that idea of anthroposophy. In any event, with regard to this material on the second Eucharist, you'll find that in all of those books. The two essays in Living, Thinking, and Action are everywhere. So anyway, that's some transitional material, and next I'm going to go on to the structure of the world.